Mr. Sterling, first of all, Canada's the regulatory agency for broadcasting, the CRTC, is holding hearings for CTV. CTV is seeking to have its license renewed for a 7-year period. We are interveners in that, and that will come as a surprise to many Newfoundland viewers because we are opposed to the application as it is presented at this time. What is our problem with the CTV application?
We're not opposed to the application. We're saying if they're dropping the word network and taking on the word service, we, who allowed them to claw back from the time we started it with the 10 other owners, they clawed back all the revenue in the 40 hours. We didn't get enough revenue from that 40 hours of advertising to even pay to maintain the transmitters across Newfoundland, without which there wouldn't be a network outside the Avalon Peninsula. So we're saying, look, if you drop the network, then we feel that we're left out here. On the other hand, if you are willing to put in a bureau properly and keep it in there and spend a few million on the development of Canadian children's shows, the focus should be on the development. If you're going to develop something, of all things you should focus on is Canadian children's programming that provide them with superheroes and role models other than just the American superhero. And therefore your children's programming has to be long-range planning. And you want to have commitments, and this is why we've created the network. Now they've clawed back all that, and they're saying, okay, forget it.
Okay. If the application is successful, as it is presented, how will the face of television change here in Newfoundland? How will the viewer recognize it?
He may not even recognize it, because what they may come... See, by 12:30 at night, the set-in-use figure is the average person's in bed before 12:30. And because of our time zone, that's when Robinson comes on, their national news, which is the core of the network. Then you have Canada AM Today from 8 to 10:30, and you have a cooking show, half hour, and you got a soap. And the rest is basically prime-time drama. But it's only 15 hours. When you take away Canada AM and Lloyd, it's 15 hours. That's 3 hours a night for 5, Monday through Friday.
One of the commissioners at the hearing made the point that a lot of the programming, Canadian content that is produced by CTV, winds up on a Saturday night, which is a low viewing level area. Is that part of what you're saying? Is that?
Well, when you say a lot of programming produced by CTV, let's face it, CFTO produces the news. CFTO in Toronto produces Canada AM, and I think W5. Well, what is this program does the CTV produce? The children's shows? Is that what they're talking about? I mean, I don't know what they're talking about when they say, we produce 129 hours NTV, at the NTV network. Hours, right? And all of our local shows are the top rated. So when you've got your own top-rated shows, a network depends really on the ability of the leadership of the local station. And by going on 24 hours a day, years before any other CTV station, we proved that we're here to service as well as hopefully have a successful business. And I mean, we're the first to bring in color. We were the first to bring in stereo. We're the first now to cover Labrador, which is vital in my opinion. But the CTV thrust is to diminish its network image, which I think is giving up a very valuable brand.
But all the things you mention are part of the history of broadcasting in this province. But what we've seen in recent years, well, just very recently, is CTV become part of BCE Inc. That appears to be the way of broadcasting in the future, in the world of convergence, which is the word. Is the viewer well served by that sort of movement?
Well, it's inevitable, Jim. I mean, there's a desire for more and more of everything, more channels, and what really happens, because we've done 35 years of research on this. I had the first dish in Arizona 30 years ago. able to surf what was happening in the development of satellites. And in those days, it was all analog, and there was nothing blocked out. You could see them changing, sending the news from Los Angeles to Washington, all of this stuff. It's all there. And I had it had to be a big dish, which I had, a big, big dish. So I had 5 or 6 years of just watching what happens when you go from 12 channel options to 15 to 25 to 50 to 100 to 200 to 300, now it's 375. And here's what happens. Well, you have all these monitors, and you start to realize it's all old sitcom, reruns, all of that. And it comes down to sport of your particular kind of sport you want. Lots of tennis, lots of golf, lots of football, lots of hockey, and so on. And then the local reality of what's happening in my life, in my environment, within 200 miles of where I was born. That's the average question. Well, if the stations they're buying, and when they buy them, they're going to maybe change management, which has made them because it's been ownership management that made them very successful. So there's no guarantee that these stations, if they lose their local dominance, are going to be any more than a small dot, because when you look at the ratings right now, which are so vital, and you see that from Monday through Friday, from noon to 7 or 8 o'clock at night, we have more viewers than all of the stations, all of the channels combined. Well, we're the only ones in Canada, or to my knowledge in the world, have that, Jim. And you've seen it in news. What other news place has added 50,000, in excess of 50,000, until you've got a quarter-hour average in the key hours of over 125,000? What other competitor? If a newspaper added 5,000 circulation, you think it'd go crazy, right? And you've added 75,000 to 100,000 in less than a decade. Well, that's tremendous. Nobody has done it. Why have you done it? Well, you've done it by developing stars, by a new type of approach to television, by interlocking certain key features, your own reflections, and all of that stuff, and you've dovetailed into unique new television formulas. We've invented a new type of television by reducing the commercials, by controlling the 30-minute commercials we won't take, and by not taking a lot of what we consider exploitive television.
Here's a tough question for you. BCE, we've talked about it, bought CTV. That's wrapped up in a Bell Globe media package. It includes the Globe and Mail. It includes Simpatico. In this world of convergence, in this world of incredible convergence,
right,
that keeps escalating,
right,
is there room for a station like yours?
Well, we're here. And we're an independent in the sense that we see it as the collective consciousness. I mean, there's you, there's Lynn, there's Tony, you are the collective consciousness of Newfoundland, represented through our news, ours, reflections, using the archives, all of those things. And yes, I think there is, but it's got to be dedicated to not just being an advertising media. It's got to be willing to say, look, and I know this is a hard point to make, to say to people who figure, they don't realize the CBC get 25 million, which is twice as much as all the advertising available if we got it. But we're on the air 2,000 hours longer, and therefore we are an alternate. But it's a very subtle thing, Jim, because people got all the clicks. It's like that, they're gone. And if you don't have a long-range plan, which we don't feel the CTV has, and if we're going to sign a contract, and it's pages of detail, and we're going to sign that, it's like Joey getting caught in the upper Churchill. There's no way I'm going to sign that. Not in a million light years. Not until they agree to a Newfoundland Bureau, $4 or $5 million in the term, developed Canadian children's shows, and 2 or 3 documentaries a year in Newfoundland through independent producers. So we only get 3% or 4% of the 200 million. That's 8 million. Well, that's not asking for very much. But we want it. We don't want to vague things on the telephone. And that's why we're saying, before you our opposition, by the way, is only on ASN not being able to increase its advertising, not on programming or what they're doing, because I got a lot of respect for CTV. We got some brilliant people, and so does the CRTC.
In our relationship with CTV now applying for a 7-year license, with Global applying for a 7-year license, in this world of shifting sands, I suppose, so to speak, is it possible that we may reemerge in a different sort of form?
You mean our network?
Yes.
I don't think so. I think what's happening, because we've gone and focused on family and controlled kind of commercials and exploitation, while they've gone and getting more and more channels, fragmenting themselves until you're really irrelative as a mass media. You know yourself, you've got to have the numbers, and they got to be on the computer, and they got to be real, and they got to be over a lengthy time, 10 years, 20 years. 90% of all the .com companies that were in existence 36 months ago are not there anymore. 90%. Well, this is why these people go in, get a specialty channel, put up a bank of repeating machines of World War II, III, and VIII, and have this going. And after 3 or 4 years, the audience has seen it 100 times. So they're out of business. But they couldn't care less. They've got themselves a big upfront parachute. The .com companies, the average one of those who started that made money, but the investors who trusted them, who thought they were, who are naive. But, that's the story of ruthlessness. We won't take that kind of advertising. We wouldn't take a lot of those companies that we're trying to get on, because we knew they weren't going to last. A company that's selling for more than 15 times earning, Jim, based on the last 5 or 10 years, that's the top price you should pay. All you got to do is say, what did the company earn for the last 5 years, or 15 years maximum, and that's the value of the company, and that's the value of the stock. And if it's more than that, it's going to take it, because even 15 times earning mean you've got to, if you don't increase the profit, you've got to go for 15 years to get back your original investment, plus the interest you lost in that investment if they didn't pay dividends in that 15 years. So that the average person is so worried and stressed out on increasing gas prices, which went up 4 cents a liter. I mean, that's a heck of a jump. I mean, a tremendous jump in one day. 4 cents, 8 cents, 12 cents, 16 cents, 70 cents a gallon. And, it's coming around where a network plays such a role to see ourselves changed. It will change in better interaction. But there's a funny feeling here that this invisible public out there got answers that we don't have. I mean, there's not enough open debates in schools where you record them and then have the top one. Interaction between schools, and then you bring the champions in front of the television cameras. Spelling bees, all of this stuff I think is going to come back. They think this is why it's reflected in Survivor. They want some real things, although these is about as fake as you're going to get. But but they want to deal with real people.
These hearings are taking place, as we mentioned at the beginning, before Canada's Broadcast Regulatory Agency. What are your thoughts on the teeth that the agency has? Because these are some very, very powerful people that are appearing before it. CTV and Global are not without resources, in general terms, of getting their own way. What about the CRTC?
Well, it's a tough job, and they're very astute, and they've really prepared for this hearing. But they're getting frustrated because they're not getting answers. They're saying, where's your plan for 7 years in children's development? And they're being told, well, we're sort of phasing out of children. And the fact that they're saying children, well, children are 2 to 6. But as I said earlier, the key people are the kids 12 and 13 and 14 and 15 who don't have any superheroes. And we had to focus on superheroes. to move it to the next place. You can fragment it, but you can go after drama and documents. And we did the documentaries with Joey and in Cuba and all around the place. Now it's a focus on children's shows, and we want them to show, and they may. I mean, as a result of this hearing, it may change their whole mindset.
A final point, I'd like you to look down the road a couple of years in a crystal ball. Do you see us as a CTV affiliate in 2 years' time? Or is that game still on the table? Is that a drama yet to be played out?
Well, I don't think you'll hardly see any notice, because if we have to replace for our own national news at 11, and we had a talk host, or we bring in a lot of Canadian programming available in the 8 to 10:30, what we should have and will have eventually is cameras, a little tiny fiber optic type cameras, so your news in your 6 to 7, Jim, becomes, here's, you go right around the country, and here's the reality of what's happening. Well, that technology is already here. We could put it in with a few more $1 million, again added, because that's how you're going to be. You're going to be better in 2 years. It just as they get the Hummer. I mean, you can see more than anybody what the difference between in the last 5 years. Once we got the thrust, and then we closed down the station, so the bleeding of the four, we closed down 5 stations. And that bleeding took a long time to stop, because you had all these commitments and leases to pay off. And the land, I mean, in the Corner Brook, Grand Falls, Gander, Grand Bank.
But what we as a network have found in recent years is that despite the 500-channel universe, there is a tremendous loyalty to the local broadcaster.
Absolutely. If the local broadcaster has done a good job and been objective and fair and so on, he dominates. I mean, this is true in every market in the United States, in Canada, I'm sure in the world. But it takes a long time. That way, why it was so important, Jim, to get on 24 hours a day years ago, when no other television, no other CTV station wanted to hear about it. I mean, they just were not interested in the board when I suggested they all do it. And if they didn't do it, I suggest they were going to be in the trouble they're in. And that is the CFTO, for example, in Toronto has gone from 29 share to an 18 share. And all of these stations have dropped tremendously in their quarter-hour share, except NTV. Because as we've improved, and more importantly, spread out, so we're available in Labrador, we're available in Rami Island, we're available for the satellite all over our coverage area, plus Newfoundlanders all over the place. Now, by phoning ExpressView or Star Choice, immediately got NTV and McMurray out in Winnipeg, is a classic example of what happens when Newfoundlanders want to keep in touch. It's unique.
We, like yourself, will be watching with interest the hearings as they proceed, and we thank you for your time this afternoon.
Well, thanks, Jim. It takes an in-depth discussion eventually, but I don't think the average viewer will hardly be aware if there is a change. And if there is a change, we'll tell them. Lloyd, because we can still get their news. I mean, if we want to bring in their packages, there's a dozen ways. We can be less than an affiliate. We can be an associate. But there's nothing we're worried about. The most important thing is the Newfoundlander has made NTV the #1 network by 1 million light years in every key area. And that's it's very gratifying after all these years. It must be for you, Jim.
It is, and we thank you.
And we thank you.
I might tell you, too, that my father, who was a machinist and pipe fitter and so on, actually worked on the what at the time was the latest development of the Lachine Canal.
I see.
In the 1920s.
Yes.
He worked on the mill in Corner Brook, and then left and went to Montreal for 5, 6,
Well,
7 years.
I went to school on the banks of the Lachine Canal.
Did you?
At Darcy McGee High School.
Yeah. Well, of course, today, now it's in effect the St. Lawrence Seaway.
Yeah.
But nobody realized that at the time.
Yeah. So
But,
right along Wellington Street.
That's right.
Wellington Street parallels it.
Yeah. So, you know, we have some
My grandfather had
connections there.
My grandfather had a store on Chablis Square.
Yeah, now, I'm not sure exactly where that is.
That's right opposite the end of the railway, the Grand Trunk Railway.
All right.
That's the big square there.
Yeah.
And right now there's an astronomical museum there.
I would say that the Dominion Bridge Company, I don't know if they were involved in the
My father was
Quebec Bridge.
My father was the head of the Montreal Tramways Company.
Ah, I see, okay.
He was the operating head.
Yeah, very good.
He didn't own the company. That was owned by Brazilian Traction.
Yeah. Well, Tom, we have more in common than we thought.
Yeah.
But I met you originally in Labrador.
That's right.
I was Minister of Mines when the Upper Churchill was beginning. The Upper Churchill project was beginning, and you were the chief architect of that.
And under Don McParland.
That's right, Don McParland.
He was the head of the company.
He had been here, and I think spoke. You can tell me more about this. I think spoke to the Rotary Club
To the
about
Canadian
the fixed link, which
Yeah.
you've been
Yeah.
trying to promote ever since.
That's right.
Tell us more about that.
Well, the fixed link is probably the most urgent need of this province. A lot of people think that electricity is, but actually, with the loss of the lumber industry, which is disappearing, the forest industry, the loss of the mining industry, and we don't have any large mines on the island as we used to. We've got to depend on the hospitality or the visitors. We have to depend on them. That's the future of this province. It's just like Ireland. It's in the tourism industry.
That's correct.
Now you've got to have, in order to have the tourism industry, you have to have a fixed link.
Well, you have to have reliable
Transportation.
inter-country transportation.
You have to have it. It should have been written into the terms of union, written in 1948. It should have been a part. And it was a shame. PEI waited until 1873 in order to incorporate the fixed link into their arrangement with Canada. And they didn't join Canada until it became a part of the Constitution. And that should have been a part of the Constitution of Newfoundland, and the terms of union between Joey Smallwood and the authorities in the Canadian federal government. It should have been very clearly stated that a fixed link was an urgent federal responsibility.
And would come in time. To replace the ferry service.
To replace
it's amazing to me, Tom,
and to bring dependable transportation.
It's amazing to me that no government of Newfoundland has raised this issue and initiated, I'll give him credit, initiated the kind of negotiation that Mr. Peckford did when he said, look, we need money for the Trans-Canada. The train is too slow. Nobody's using the train anymore. It's uneconomic as a narrow gauge operation.
Right.
So give us 20 years of your railway losses so we can work on the highways, and then you can wrap up the railway. And we should be doing the same thing with the ferry boats.
You couldn't say anything more true.
Yeah.
To me, there's, as I said at the beginning, Bill, there's nothing, absolutely nothing more important to this province than reliable transportation. And reliable transportation requires a fixed link. Just to give you an idea, the average auto transportation annually from the mainland of North America into the island is around 120,000. 120,000 reliable cars come across the ferry a year. Across the fixed link between New Brunswick and PEI, there's 1.2 million.
And there you go.
It's 10 times, and we are at least 10 times the size of PEI.
Your argument is proved right there.
I worked on that. I was hired by the Canadian federal government to be a part of that transportation, and I recommended that the fixed link had to be completed. That's part of history, and as a result of that, I immediately saw the absolute need for the transportation connection across the Strait of Belle Isle between North America and the island of Newfoundland.
Now, Tom, this wasn't a new idea with you. It was to have been part of the original Upper Churchill development.
That's right. That was Don McParland and I. He said that as soon as we finished, got the job done on the Upper Churchill, that we had to start on the Lower Churchill and the fixed link.
This was phase 2, right?
Phase 2. Yeah. And it was one of the greatest mistakes that Canada ever made, was to eliminate the ownership of the Upper Churchill by expropriating Brinko.
Not Canada, Newfoundland.
Newfoundland expropriating Brinko.
Yeah. And for a number of reasons, too, because it's not unlikely that Newfoundland had a good case against the Churchill Falls Corporation, not against Quebec, not against Canada, but against the Churchill Falls Corporation for the recall of power.
That's right.
And that was extinguished by the fact that Newfoundland expropriated the Upper Churchill and therefore would have had to sue itself.
And Frank Moores, the premier at that time, admitted before he died that was the worst mistake that he ever made in his life.
And we're living with it today.
And we're living with that mistake today. And it seems as though there still is a fairly substantial number of bureaucrats, I call them. Maybe that's an unkind word, but it defines the people. That these are people that have only one responsibility, and that is to taxpayers, when in fact they should be responsible to investors.
Yeah. Well, of course, this is how the Upper Churchill started, as a privately funded, investor-owned corporation.
As soon as
and was changed by that expropriation.
Yeah, as soon as Joey Smallwood took power, he went over to see Churchill.
That's right.
And Churchill arranged with the Rothschild family, the Rio Tinto family, who formed the background of Brinko.
Yep.
And Don McParland worked for the Rio Tinto. That's when I met Don, when he worked at Elliott Lake and Sudbury, just near Sudbury, on the uranium projects and for the Rio Tinto. And that's when I met Don. And Don told me that he wanted me to work with him because I had been an engineer with Inco for 18 years, and I probably was one of the few people that understood how to design and build large underground cavities.
Now, Tom, the fact that the Upper Churchill was expropriated and became, in effect, a crown corporation of the Newfoundland government doesn't erase the fact that this started out as a private company. And the other day I went looking for information, and of course all you have to do is go to the Legislative Library, and it's all there.
That's right.
1961, the Newfoundland government gave a lease to the Hamilton Falls Power Company, later changed to Churchill Falls,
yes,
to do that development. So it was completely their job, completely their project.
So that was,
and it was a unanimous
we used to call
decision.
them Churchill Falls Labrador Corporation.
Well, that was another name.
Yeah,
that's right.
that company was owned by Brinko.
That's right. And then later the Churchill...
And Brinko was owned by the Rio Tinto,
Yeah.
which is the Rothschild family.
And a lot of other companies involved, like Bowaters and the Rothschilds Bank and most of the big corporations in the world.
They formed Brinko,
But the
British
decision,
Newfoundland Corporation.
the decision to provide Brinko with the right to do that development was made by unanimous vote of the House of Assembly in the spring of 1961. And that meant that Brinko, as a private company, just like any other private company that starts a mine or a forest company or whatever, using natural resources, Brinko got the right there to do that development. So this idea that the present Nalcor built the Upper Churchill or any of that nonsense makes you wonder where people are getting that information.
Pure nonsense. Yeah, it's pure nonsense, because you know that, and I know that.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that the people of Newfoundland are not being given an opportunity to talk about this, because I understand that the present government are determined to pass through this Lower Churchill idea under the guise of it being the Lower Churchill development, when in fact it is just a bunch of bureaucrats who, since they've been formed, and with the taking over of Brinko, the expropriation of Brinko by the provincial government, when that occurred, that was the biggest mistake, and Frank Moores admitted it before he died.
That's right, he did. Tom, what do you make of what's happening now with the muskrat development?
This is one of the. I'd soon be, within a few months, have completed my 100. I'm in my 100th year now.
Yes, I know.
This is the.
I can't wait to congratulate you.
This is the worst proposal I have ever seen in my life. With the worst engineering proposal I have ever seen in my life, and I have been an engineer now since 1939.
It's a pretty confusing picture, isn't it?
How long ago was that? That's
Well,
about 70 years old.
70 years ago.
Nearly 75 years ago.
But what do you make of it, of the project itself? What?
To me, it's an impossible problem. As I think I went into that in my letter to which the St. John's Telegram was kind enough to produce.
Yes, very recently. You did
very recently. Yeah. I think I outlined that, and if anybody wants to see that, they can see that. And if they want more information than is in that, I'm sure that we can provide it for them. Because I've already made several talks on this subject.
It seems to me very, very strange, almost bizarre, that you have, senior officials of the government, the Premier herself even, the former Premier, all appearing not to know the history of the project.
It's one of the strangest experiences that I have to undergo, and I have to undergo it every morning when they talk about it on the news. This is a letter from the government after I had sent in my proposal, and it just reads the second paragraph there. Can you read it out loud?
Yes, I will. But now, before I do, I'll just repeat my question. If you were the boss, if you were running this project today in the year 2012, going into 2013, I think that's right?
That's right.
What approach would you take to it? Now, this is a letter from Newfoundland Hydro, which I guess is Nalcor as well.
Yes.
To you from Mr.
The
Bennett.
Vice President.
Mr. Bennett, the Vice President. Yeah. And it says in part, government and hydro will not be pursuing the development concept to combine a fixed transportation link, development of the Lower Churchill, and privatization of the province's electricity sector as outlined in your proposal. So it sounds like they have summarily said, we don't like your proposal.
They have no intention of even studying it.
Right. So
Now-
you tell us what
Now,
is your proposal?
how in the world
Yeah.
can an engineer say that he has completely studied any kind of a project dealing with the Lord Churchill, including the Muskrat Falls idea, which, as I said before, Bill, is the worst idea I've ever heard of in my engineering experience. And to saddle the taxpayers of this province with the $10 billion cost, as some people have estimated, they may say maybe one side or the other of $10 billion, but
That's right, it could be more.
roughly $10 billion. To saddle the taxpayers of this province with such an enormous expense on a fruitless project, on a project which has no attachment at all to the transportation problems of this province, and for that matter, very little attachment to the real electrical needs of the province. For them to do that and say in a letter to me that they have no intention of studying it, and then say that they have studied the idea completely, is, well, it's almost impossible to believe that anybody could say that.
But yet it's here in the letter. We will not, or Hydro will not be pursuing the development concept as outlined in your proposal.
That's right.
Now, tell us, what is your proposal? What should they be doing?
Well, it's in two.
I have a map here,
It's in two parts, Bill.
which I can hold up for you.
For the first part, at the present time, the electrical power for the people of the island of Newfoundland is served by Newfoundland Power, which is a subsidiary of a company called Fortis,
Correct.
which is an investor corporation.
Yep.
I happen to be a shareholder, small shareholder of it.
Me
Very-
too.
Very small, but still, it's an investor corporation. And I have decided that this is a worthy corporation to invest in. Now, the government, the present government of Newfoundland has decided, as you saw in the letter, that they are not going to pursue that. They're not even going to study it. Now, how can you say that you've studied the problem in depth or in full if you say at the beginning of your letter, in a written letter to me, that you have no intention of following that? You know, no intention of studying it. How can you say that? How can that make sense to anybody?
But they do say it.
But they say it.
Yeah.
So in other words, they are denying what they say they are doing. On one hand, they say that they are open to all ideas, whereas you see in a letter, they are not open to any ideas other than those proposed by bureaucrats of the present government.
Now, Tom, tell us, what is your proposal?
My proposal is to state this. First of all, that you put the federal government, it's in two parts. The first part is to create a new Trans-Canada Highway along the north shore of the Gulf of St. Lawrence that would fill the 350 kilometers distance from Seven Islands, the missing 350 from Seven Islands to
Blanc-Sablon or
Blanc-Sablon.
whatever the terminus might be.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the first part, for the federal government to do that. Now, the federal government is obligated to pay roughly 80% of the cost of that. So it's a very modest cost for the taxpayers to undertake to fill that. As a matter of fact, until it enters the province of Newfoundland, Labrador and Newfoundland, on the north shore of the Gulf of St. Lawrence, they don't pay anything.
That's correct.
The federal government
Highway is already there.
and Hydro-Quebec would be obligated to pay that cost. So we only pick up the cost once it enters this province. But it's a brand new connection from the central part of the continent of Newfoundland, of North America, including New York, Montreal, Toronto, Chicago,
Easy accessibility.
Easy accessibility and permanent accessibility in a very short time, and reliable accessibility.
No ferries tied up in port
the
for
ferries
days.
the ferries can remain for the kinds of things.
Well, they could, yes.
I wouldn't eliminate them
As tourist boats.
yes, but as far as the actual urgent need for reliable transportation from the mainland of North America to the island of Newfoundland, this proposal of mine would be carried out by a new Trans-Canada highway along the north shore of the Gulf of St. Lawrence and across the Strait of Belle Isle.
Now, how would this complement or be complemented by the Lower Churchill development?
Now, the next part 2, I gave you part 1.
Yep.
Part 2 is very simple. Part 2 states that investors should be invited, and not taxpayers, but investors should be invited to participate in a new company that probably could be under the direction of Newfoundland Power. Newfoundland Power are doing a very good job under Fortis now. We get very reliable. The light behind me is supplied by Newfoundland Power and has been supplied for about 100 years by Newfoundland Power. It's one of the first companies formed in this.
That's correct.
Even before we were a province of Canada. So, I mean, it's a reliable organization, and it's investors, and it doesn't place any obligation on the part of taxpayers. You've got to understand the difference between taxpayers and investors. Taxpayers are obligated to pay for infrastructure that's used in this province, and they should be.
Yeah.
But any new resources, just like our oil, for that matter, our fisheries, were done by small investors, mostly by small investors, some by large investors. The iron ore is an investor corporation. That's an investor corporation. The new,
meaning no government money involved.
As a matter of fact, it's a source of revenue for the government. So it becomes a taxpayer source because those resources belong to the people of this province. They don't belong to the bureaucrats or to the government. They belong to the people of this province. And for that reason, the people should be allowed to study a proposal like I've submitted, which calls for an investor corporation to be responsible for the production of all power in the whole province as one company.
Now, what about the actual development, Tom?
The development then would be left to this company. They could, for example, I don't know whether this would be one of the things they would do. This would require detailed study. But they could even purchase Hydro-Quebec's interest in the Upper Churchill.
That's correct. And then Quebec will be out of the picture.
And as far as I can see, they could do that legally, because that resource belongs to the people of this province.
That's right.
So the people of this province, if they wanted to state that that resource had to be purchased by a company incorporated within this province, like Fortis, then or Newfoundland Power, then that company would become responsible for the production of power in the whole province, in all of Labrador, and in all of the island. The production of all power, all energy.
Now, Tom, at the
they should be able to seek the support of the federal government in doing that.
They should. At the annual meeting of Fortis 2 years ago, I asked the question of why Fortis was not involved. And Mr. Marshall, the chief executive officer, answered that they had been interested and they had been invited, but they were not interested in being in as a minority shareholder in which the government was a majority.
And I don't blame them.
No, I don't blame them either, and not just this government.
No, as a matter of fact, I would not be a shareholder of the company if they did that.
But, you know, that seemed to me to leave open the prospect that if they could go in and with their own company, as you just described, rather than having to go in as a minority of a government-owned country, if they could go in on their own and do it, they would do it.
That's right.
And they're the most successful power company, I think, in Canada.
Well, they're all over the world now.
That's right.
They're producing power in New York City. They're producing power in South America. So, I mean, they are a very outstanding worldwide corporation. And I think they could actually raise the money in order to purchase the contract, and they could do it under the laws.
They're a multi-billion-dollar company.
They could raise the money to pay to take over Hydro-Quebec's interest in the Upper Churchill completely.
Could I ask you if you have spoken with Dr. Bruno or Mr. Marshall?
I've talked with Angus Bruno's son.
Yes, Stephen.
Stephen.
But his
And
father, of course, was the founder of Fortis.
And his father was a very close friend of mine. His father hired me to be a professor at the university.
Yes, he would have,
in 1974.
As the Dean of Engineering.
Yeah. And he asked me, I remember he called me on the telephone, and he asked me, how would I like to be a professor at Memorial University? And I told him, when do I start?
So have you spoken with him?
I never even asked the salary.
Have you spoken with him about this?
Yes, I have.
And their interest?
I don't want to put words in his mouth. I'll let him
I understand
speak for himself. But my understanding is that Stephen Bruno has proposed that natural gas.
He has. I was at the lecture.
And there's nothing wrong with that kind of a proposal. It has to be evaluated. It has to be studied. But it's a very important proposal.
That's correct.
And he should be given credit for it.
Yeah. Well, he's getting very little credit for it. He's getting, as most people, knowledgeable people who are trying to...
The saddest thing that has occurred to me in my life in this province is the formation of a company of bureaucrats whose only support are taxpayers, and where they have been, the idea of investors has been totally eliminated, purposefully eliminated, as you saw in the letter from the vice president of that company.
Tom Cairns, I want to thank you for giving us this time today. It's a terribly important issue and development for this province, and I only hope that the people who have the power to direct it will listen to the words of a man who's not only been involved in engineering all his life, but who has seen power developments around the world and knows what he's talking about. And when they say, oh, we're not hearing from the experts, if they hear from you, they won't be able to say that anymore.
I could show you a manual that was prepared by the American Society of Civil Engineers. That's in the United States. There's a Canadian Society of Civil Engineers. I'm a fellow of that organization. But I was the only Canadian that was invited to write the manual on nuclear power and structures, nuclear power facilities and structures.
Structural analysis and design of nuclear plant facilities.
Now look at the editors of that.
Oh yes, I see it.
Now do you see, Tom?
The editing board and task force chairman.
Those are people from all over the world.
Yep.
The only Canadian that has participated in the writing of this manual
is T.W. Cairns.
That's myself. And I'm very proud to have that.
Yep. Well, Tom, thank you again. And
there's a letter in here which thanks me for my work on this book.
I can only hope that the people with the power, and I don't mean electricity, the people with the ability to make things happen in this province will, if I can put it this way, take the advice of a man who knows.
Well, I'm not going to be here very much longer. As I said earlier, Bill, I'm going to be, I'm in my 100th year now.
I realize that, and we hope you'll be here.
I will have completed it in February of 1913.
Well, we'll come here again in March and have another chat.
Well,
before then probably, but certainly in March.
Well, I think we've opened up the thing, and I think you understand. There's two proposals, just to re-emphasize them. The first proposal is to create a new Trans-Canada Highway along the north shore of the Gulf of St. Lawrence in Quebec, and then into Newfoundland, and then across the Strait of Belle Isle to the island of Newfoundland. That's point number one. Point number two is to ensure that investors, an investor corporation, not taxpayer corporation, not a corporation like the Melchior, which is now has to depend on taxpayers for its sustenance.
Not Newfoundlanders having to go out and borrow $10 billion.
That's right.
At a time when we're saying we have to cut back.
When there are investors who would be very anxious and willing to take it over under the right conditions, under favorable conditions.
Tom, it's good to talk to you today, and we'll see you again in March.
Well, thanks very much, Bill.
If not before.
It's been a pleasure. God bless you.
You too.